So out of this inaccessible PDF conversion to Word process, three main questions arose in my mind as this was happening. The first question is, why do we convert a PDF? Now, the big answer is it needs to be accessible, so we convert the PDF. Yes, that needs to be something that can be an accessible document, and a PDF is typically not going to be accessible, especially for math. So we need to make it accessible. Is converting it to a Word document the only option? Most likely not. It's one of the options I chose because a lot of faculty I know use Word with math type, and some don't necessarily know the tech commands. So that's the path I chose. There's going to probably be a lot more technology that makes it easier later, especially if you have your original tech file. But the other reason is the PDF wasn't showing up properly on the student's end. So let's say you're working with a single student, as was the case, that something on their end, their matrices in my PDF were not showing up. I don't know why. I can't explain it. It was some kind of phenomenon. Regardless, I needed to get that student some kind of document, even though there was no accommodations, no screen reader. I needed to get an alternate version of that document right away to the student. And I converted it to a Word document and copied over the images and such as quickly as I could. Now, in that case, they didn't need the alt text. I didn't need to do that for that particular student, and it was only going to that student. But if that's the case, I just did a quick fix, made it a Word document with images, with equations, and then they got this alternate format they were able to work with. The other thing is, why are we converting PDF when there's all these other ways things are presented? Well, a lot of us have old material that's just in PDF form. I know I have a lot of stuff where I've lost the tech or the Word files and all I have is the PDF. There's other material that we get that's strictly in PDF format, whether it's from research or conferences, and all we have is a PDF. And then we need to work with that, whether it's worksheets or whatnot. And how do we work with that? And this is one of the ways we can. So that brings me to, how do we convert the PDF? Well, the first method that I showed, and the only method essentially that I've shown, is going into a Word document. Because once you're in a Word document, you can kind of take that knowledge elsewhere. So that tended to be something I saw as an advantage if we can export to a Word document and do some modifications. So that's the method that's shown in the videos. And this is done by changing the math. We used tech commands, copying into math type, and Equatio when we had the large equations. So the tech and the math type became basically crucial because of the formatting that ended up coming up. And that was spoken about in length, because formatting, it could be a nightmare. It's sometimes just something that will turn a 5-minute project into a 45-minute project. That's if you're lucky sometimes. So when we have to deal with formatting, how do we deal with it when we not only have text, we have math? And that's where the toggle tech command, toggle tech button on the math type comes into play. And then Equatio was great for the bigger equations. So we had to change the math and then fix the formatting. And I approached the formatting two ways, going from where we used the old document where all the formatting stayed and we tried to fix it. And then I tried the other method of copying everything over as text and then adding the formatting. That seemed to be the better way to go. But as I've been hearing over and over again, one size does not fit all. It depends on your document and what's fastest for you. What have we learned from doing this? So one thing I've learned from converting anything and looking at all of the technology is it rarely goes smoothly. The technology changes, the technology doesn't work, the versions change. It's just, that's how technology is. User error. I'm sure there's plenty I don't know that I'm doing wrong. So just a copy and paste is rarely a copy and paste. Something usually comes up. Also, we've learned that more equations adds times to complete the task. If there's more equations, because whether you're doing a toggle tech, which means you have to add dollar signs, or whether you're doing trying to convert with math type, or you're moving the equations from one place to the other. If you have more equations, it's going to take longer. That's just how it's going to be. If it's a one-page small document with 3 questions, probably take 5 minutes. If it's, like the page I was working on, 5 pages, and it had multiple equations and images, you're looking at something at least more than probably 30 to 60 minutes at least. So it's going to take longer. Images, that adds a complexity to the document. And especially if there's no image description and you have to put one yourself, and especially it's for assessment, that adds a complication as well. So that takes time. The big thing I mentioned before, the original formatting that's exported, it takes a lot of work to fix, and there's a lot of hidden things in there that you just won't spot. And the ideal situation is to start fresh. And start fresh could mean that you're working to take it and you copy and paste as text only, as I did. Or when you began making your exams, began making your quizzes, your lecture notes, you start from a place of accessibility, because then how you lay out your exam, quiz, lecture notes will be with accessibility in mind. And I know we've heard this a lot, but from doing this, I notice as I start creating from an accessible standpoint, which is still not fully accessible sometimes, it's easier to go and modify that document than starting from scratch, as I showed in these videos. So getting in that mindset of starting to make things accessible now as you begin writing the document is kind of key. And the last thing that came out from this, because I didn't even completely finish converting the document just due to time, if it's too much, we need to be able to ask for help. If you're working on it, it's just like a math problem. If you get stuck, what do? We go to our peers, we go to an expert, we go and do research, and that always takes time, and we need help. And that's the case when we're working on these conversions. If it's too much for us, we need to get it to a student, it's something that just came up, then we need to be able to go to a place to ask for help, and we need to know that we can ask for help, whether it's small or big. So this, I think, is a key component of what came out of when I was creating this set of videos, is the discussion aspect, because we do have a lot of PDFs, and we really need to think about how we're doing this for efficiency, but what we're learning and where we need to go from here when we're converting our PDFs.